What is up, my friends, and welcome to another edition of the AEW Weekend Review. I'm your host, Mark Perry, editor of Pro Wrestling News Hub, covering pro wrestling and not sports entertainment. On this week's show, AEW's Unrivaled Series 2, we'll talk about that and more, plus a recap of this week's Dynamite Dark and the latest TV ratings. So how do you get in touch with the show? It's simple. You email podcast@prowrestlingnewshub.com with your MP3s or videos, or call 888-430-7692. Extension 3. Remember, cutoff time is 6 p.m. Eastern on Thursdays. And leave us a review on Apple Podcast. We'll read it on the show. We'd really appreciate that. This week's question: who wins the 8-man single elimination tournament? I have my picks later on in the show. Next week's question of the week, and this deals with what we're working on, which is the AEW Fantasy Wrestling. Who would be your number one overall pick if you had the first pick in the AEW draft? Who would you take? Moxley, Jericho, MJF, Darby Allin, Wardlow, Marco Stunt? Who knows? Let us know. That's a question for next week. So without further ado, folks, let's just get into the week that was AEW. All right, we have results for AEW Dark for October 20th. And one of the nice things about what's going on with Dark, if you're getting a chance to check it out, is that there are storylines starting to happen rather than just these matches that mean nothing. And there's still matches that mean nothing, but we're starting to get some storylines that are bleeding into AEW Dynamite. First up, we have Shawn Spears defeating Christopher Daniels. But then after the match, Shawn Spears hits Christopher Daniels with another C4, and then Scorpio Sky comes out for the save. Hold on to that thought as we continue. Brandy Rhodes defeats Caitlin King. Ricky Starks defeated David Ali. Scorpio Sky defeats Fuego del Sol in a singles match. And of course, Fuego del Sol is involved with Being the Elite and Sammy Guevara's YouTube channels. But then after the match, Shawn Spears' music hits, but he doesn't show up. And we also know in the rankings this week that Scorpio Sky gets knocked out of the top 5 by Shawn Spears. So we have some kind of storyline going on AEW Dark. Next, we get Luchasaurus defeating Aaron Solo. The Butcher and the Blade defeated Brian Pillman and Griff Garrison. We got Penta El Zero M defeating QT Marshall. Jungle Boy defeats KTB. Ivelisse and Diamante defeat Kenzie Page and Skylar Moore. Colt Cabana defeats BSHP King. Dark Order's Alan Angels 5 defeats Adam Priest. Frankie Kazarian defeats Jack Evans. Dark Order Alex Reynolds 3 and John Silver 4 and Preston Vance 10 defeat Louis Val, Baron Black, and D3. Wardlow defeats Vinny Pacifico. Eddie Kingston then announces that the Bunny is now back with the Butcher and the Blade, and now the family is back together. So we'll see where that kind of leads. Again, another storyline that then bleeds into regular AEW Dynamite. Good to see that her back with them. What she was doing before was a waste of time. Matt Sydal defeats Sean Dean. Ray Phoenix defeats Sonny Kiss. And that concludes AEW Dark. Results for AEW Dynamite for October 21st, and I must say that this is probably one of the better episodes of AEW Dynamite I've seen in a while. This was a fantastic show all around. First up, we got the World Title Eliminator match, Wardlow versus Jungle Boy, and winner. And my pick, Wardlow, I gave this one a 3.25. I was surprised they started this one. I thought maybe Kenny Omega would start, or potentially Hangman Page, but no, we went with Wardlow, the two young guys, and I don't have a problem with that. This was a good match. We later get a review, and I picked Wardlow, by the way. Later, we get a review of last week's match afterwards with Eddie Kingston talking all sorts of smack to Jon Moxley, only as Eddie Kingston does, and then it's announced that a Jon Moxley versus Eddie Kingston I Quit match will be at AEW Full Gear. That seems very interesting. Moxley responds, talking all sorts of smack too. Next, we get Kenny Omega versus Sonny Kiss in a World Title Eliminator match because Joey Janela was out because he was around people with COVID over the weekend. We reported that on Pro Wrestling News Hub to check out that article. So Joey Janela is out, Sonny Kiss is in. It didn't really matter because this match was over in 2 seconds. Kenny Omega with the win. I don't know if that was the plan all along, or it was just going to be a big squash match with Joey Janela, or that Sonny Kiss wasn't ready. I was really excited to see Sonny Kiss go against Kenny Omega, but it was really quick. I gave it a 2.00 just because it was so quick, and I thought these guys would put on a pretty good match. Orange Cassidy checks in only as he does. Eddie Kingston then responds to Jon Moxley's call out, so they're getting November 7th. Should be pretty fun. World title eliminator match, Rey Fenix versus Penta El Zero. Match of the night, elite match of the night. One of the best matches of the year, hands down. I thought Rey Fenix got knocked out a little bit, and I was afraid maybe he couldn't continue. It seemed like that was going on. Winner, Rey Fenix. I gave this probably one of my highest grade ever, 4.50. The elite match of the night by far. Rey Fenix is in my top 3. I also picked that he would win this match as well, and I also picked Kenny Omega, clearly. As one of my top 3 favorite AEW wrestlers is definitely Rey Fenix. No question about it. Penta, Rey Fenix, outstanding match. So good. So interesting to watch. And then you had Eddie Kingston on the mic as well. Perfect. You can't really get any better than that. That was fantastic. Best Friends and Kip Sabian and Miro segment, talking about their video game. So I bet you we'll see something with Best Friends and them next week, or maybe at the pay-per-view. Dark Order checks in, and John Silver is getting a lot of run now. Being the elite, kind of making a name for himself, and now it's bleeding over into AEW Dynamite. He was all fired up and ready to go. This is using the tools, YouTube, to build these characters up, gets us interested in watching it. So it was a good little segment there for John Silver. Next, we had world title eliminator match, Hangman Adam Page versus Colt Cabana. I'm not a huge fan of Colt Cabana. No surprise here. Adam Page wins it, 3.50. Then, which I've picked as well. Then we had the Chris Jericho MJF segment, and I just put in there that it was unique. It was a singing Broadway-ish musical number, and we all knew MJF could sing. That's why he appeared on the Rosie O'Donnell show when he was a kid. Of course, Chris Jericho can sing as well. So it was really interesting. At first, I was like, people are going to make fun of this, but it was unique. It was different. We'll see where this goes, but this was definitely just being creative and getting out of your comfort zone. There was no doubt, and this is not what anybody expected, that we would get a musical number. So it was interesting. Love to hear your thoughts on the Chris Jericho MJF segment. Later, we got Britt Baker versus Kaylin King. This was a good match. Good to see Britt Baker back. Gave this one a 2.75. We get Darby Allin checking in with Steve-O. This big stunt was nothing but just sticking in a bag and falling down a skate ramp. That wasn't really that big of a deal compared to the other things we've seen Darby Allin do, but okay. The number 1 contender 4-way tag team match. Another great match, The Butcher and the Blade. The Dark Order, Alex Reynolds, John Silver. Private Party, Mark Quinn, Isaiah Cassidy, and of course the Young Bucks. Winner, the Young Bucks. This was another great match, and if it wasn't for Penta and Rey Fenix, this would have been the match of the night, but I gave this one a 4 as well. So overall, it was a great night of wrestling on AEW Dynamite. Next week's card for AEW Dynamite, we continue with the world title, this time quarterfinals. First up, we're going to have a town hall meeting to decide if MJF joins the Inner Circle or not. That'll be interesting. I doubt he joins the Inner Circle, but okay, I'm with you going with all this. World Title Eliminator Tournament quarterfinals, Kenny Omega versus Rey Fenix. That should be a fantastic match. This is not going to be a squash match. I'm picking Kenny Omega to win this. We get Hangman Page versus Wardlow. Hangman Page will win this too. We'll get Kenny and Page. Though it would be an interesting one if Wardlow, this is the only one that could maybe sway, and Wardlow wins and Page is kind of disappointed. We don't get that Page versus Omega thing. We might want to string that along, but we might want to, I wonder if they just want to close that loop and then move on to something else. We'll see what happens there. And then Tay Conte versus Abaddon. Abaddon we haven't seen for a long time on TV. So Abaddon returns and Tay Conte returns. We'll have more match announcements throughout the week. There is no doubt about that. But it's shaping up to be a great show. Ratings are in for this week's AEW and NXT shows, and no surprise here, news dominated the night. Ratings for the Wednesday, October 21st, 2020 edition of AEW Dynamite were released Thursday. According to a report by Showbuzz Daily, AEW finished 13th overall for the night. Dynamite drew 753,000 viewers, way down from last week's 826,000 viewers. They finished 15th overall last week. Dynamite was live at Daly's Place and featured the World Title Eliminator Tournament, as well as the four-way tag match, and of course our singing Jericho and MJF. We didn't know about that at the time. NXT drew 644,000 viewers, slightly down from last week's 651,000 viewers. It finished 56th overall. Last week they finished 51st. The show featured Breezango, Tyler Breeze, and Fandango versus only Lorcan and Danny Burch. Total combined wrestling audience for both shows was down 1.397 million viewers. It was 1.477 million viewers last week. No surprise there. Based on the ratings, news, and more news dominated the night. News programming took 13 of the top 15 spots. Only AEW and The Real Housewives of OC, which finished at number 4, were the only two non-news programs. So basically, this is going to be this week and next week dominated by the news with everything going on in the country, plus an election. It's going to be tough to crack that news. I'm glad that there was no debate going on, because then that would have really crushed things. In the 50-plus demo, AEW was clearly down 0.28, which was down from about 0.36 last week. And I wonder why the big 50-plus demo is down. Because they were watching news, and more news. Expect the same type of numbers next week. However, it is great that AEW was was basically one of two shows that weren't news related to finish in the top 15, which says a lot about their product. We get a little sneak peek of AEW's Unrivaled Series, the action figures. So this isn't what you can get at Walmart now. These are actually new guys. So Series 1 includes stars like Cody, Brandy Rhodes, Kenny Omega, Chris Jericho, and the Young Bucks. And if you're like me, going to the store, you can never find them except for the AEW belt. That's about it. These toys come from Toymaker and Jazzwares. And they gave us this past week a sneak peek of the Unrivaled 2 series collection. This series features AEW champion Jon Moxley, Dustin Rhodes, MJF, Hangman Adam Page, Rey Fenix, and Penta L0M. Also included in this special collection is special Moxley and MJF edition. So first you got Jon Moxley. He's got the belt. He's got his Mox jacket. Looking pretty cool there. His special is one of 500 collector rare editions. He's got him wearing the Inner Circle shirt with a little bit of the bubbly, which I think is awesome, and I would love to get a handle on that one. MJF has got his with his microphone and his usual scarf. But there's also the special 1 in 1,000 special edition, which has got his ring on. So that's kind of cool too. You got Dustin Rhodes with his face paint. Rey Fenix, which is one of my favorite wrestlers we've talked about, and I definitely want that figure. Adam Hangman Page, probably get him for my brother because Page and my brother went to Virginia Tech. So got to get him a Hokie. Penta, probably get him too just because he's got one of the coolest masks and things going on in wrestling. So, I mean, let's be honest. If I can find any of them, I would get them all. But if I were to have my pick, I would definitely want Rey Fenix out of this list. Any MJF would probably be my two, and Moxley. But clearly, I would take anyone if you can find them. So leave a message in the comments and let us know. Have you been able to find these figures anywhere? any Walmart, every time I pass a Walmart, I try to look in and see if they have them, and they never do, which I guess is a good thing. Cody Rhodes recently talked about AEW's success on ITV in the UK. He recently went on Twitter and talked about how great AEW Dynamite it's doing, and also gave us some bullet points to take a look at. So first up, AEW Dynamite is beating the first run broadcast of all of its competitors in the UK for audience volume. I'm not really sure what that means, but okay, that sounds good. Dynamite's audience is over 5 times that of NXT, double that of SmackDown, and almost double of Raw. So it basically means that Dynamite is crushing WWE programming in the UK, which could you imagine what kind of events they're going to have when this whole thing passes us by and we can get back at having some live events. The UK is looking strong. It is also almost double the audience of Impact Wrestling. I think I have double the audience of Impact Wrestling. Okay, that's kind of mean, but okay. Which has been airing on the same slot as Dynamite and also on a free-to-air channel. So they're doing way better than Impact Wrestling did in that same slot. Dynamite benefits from reaching considerably more people than any of its competitors, no question. Full episodes of Dynamite on ITV4 have reached 2.8 million people based on 5+ consecutive minutes of viewing. So 2.8 people have watched more than 5 minutes of AEW Dynamite, which is fantastic. I wonder if they can get the action figures out there. And finally, in its first year, AEW programming on ITV channels reached 6.7 million people based on them having at least 5 consecutive minutes of viewing. So there you have it. Dynamite is a success not only in the United States, but clearly Dynamite is a success in the UK as well, even beating, look at that number. Its audience is over 5 times that of NXT, double that of SmackDown, and almost double of Raw. That tells you where All Elite Wrestling is headed. Did you know you can get all the latest AEW news right from your phone? That's right, we're excited to announce the Pro Wrestling News Hub app. That's right, and it's free. You can get it for your iPhone. You can get it for your Google Android phone. And they're both free. You get all our breaking AEW news, information from Pro Wrestling News Hub right from your phone. You can just visit the Apple Store or the Google Play Store. What do you get? You get the latest news from Pro Wrestling News Hub. You get push notifications when a new post or story comes out. You get our podcast on the phone. You can leave us a review on iTunes, links to our social media, and so much more. All you have to do is, if you have an iPhone, go to the iTunes store and just look up Pro Wrestling News Hub and download it. Just type in AEW News. You can get our phone app, and guess it is free, my friends. It's free. So head over. You get all the latest news right from your phone, from your friends from Pro Wrestling News Hub, whether you have an iPhone or an Android. And it's best of all, it's free. Let's take a quick look at some of our social media stuff. First, about Cody Rhodes says he's more of an executive than a wrestler. Mask Mauler 1 says he fights every week and wins. Yeah, okay. True. We posted this about Kenny Omega making a little switch there on AEW Dynamite this past week. That's the Kenny we want with the sunglasses. Seabass Egg says, wish he at least brought back the sunglasses. Yeah, didn't have the sunglasses, but we had those 2 ladies with the brooms. Kenny the Cleaner, perhaps. And how would you grade AEW Dynamite? V. Lymphatus says F-, down from a D. I assume he is an NXT fan, of course. On to our question of the week. The Eliminator match, and I talked about this at the last podcast. I had Rey Fenix beating Penta. I was correct. Kenny Omega defeating Joey Janela / Sonny Kiss. Had that correct. Hangman beating Colt and Wardlow beating Jungle Boy. Had all that correct. My picks, it's going to be Kenny Omega,
Hangman Page at the pay-per-view, a little too predictable. Maybe we could get Page beating Wardlow or Wardlow beating Page. But I think they just want to close this angle out. And that's it for the social media this week. All right, remember, question of the week. Who is your number one overall pick in AEW Fantasy, as we're working on the AEW Fantasy website application, we should say. So that's the question for it next week. I hope you enjoy the shows next week. If you want to be part of the show, remember, podcast at ProWrestlingNewsHub.com or call 888-430-7692 extension 3. Follow us everywhere, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and especially YouTube. Pro Wrestling News Hub. Give us a like and subscribe, please. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We'll read it on the show, and you can listen to us everywhere you can get podcasts. Show notes, ProWrestlingNewsHub.com/AEW-podcast. Join us on the Discord so you can be part of that AEW Fantasy Wrestling chat that we got going on there. And that's it for this week. Enjoy the shows next week. It should be a lot of fun. That's it for me, folks. Thanks for listening. Mahalo. Put your mask on. God bless. And I will see you all later.